understand what could be the next step for this vaccine, together with a full assessment of the other aspects of the dossier, including manufacturing.
Thank you, Dr. Cavalieri. The next question is from Donato Mancini from the Financial Times. Donato, you have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thanks so much for taking my question. So on vaccine equity and boosters, has there ever been a feeling among you that companies were trying to pressure you into approving boosters without there actually being an evident need to boost yet, with the exception, of course, of specific subgroups of vulnerable patients? Has there ever been a feeling that perhaps we were jumping the gun? And when do you expect to be able to make decisions on boosters? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donato. That's a very important question. I think Dr. Cavalieri will start. Thank you.
Yeah, I think as normally we are in dialogue with the companies in order to understand what data are emerging and what we can conclude based on those data. As you know, we as regulators and other regulators in other parts of the world, we are starting in putting the question out of not rushing into giving booster if there is not a clear indication that they are needed. And we have been following rigorously this path. So now I think it's important for us always to base our decision on evidence and not on any pressure by any stakeholder, and that's what we will continue to do. Now, as said before, with the increase of breakthrough cases that we've seen over time, we do understand that member states in Europe and countries elsewhere want to consider already now the option of a booster, particularly in vulnerable groups. And that's why we have been expediting our review of the Comirnaty dossier, which is the only one that we have now in our hands as a complete package, in order to come up with an opinion on booster doses by the beginning of October.
Thanks, Dr. Cavalieri. The next question is from Gillian Deutsch from Politico. Gillian, please.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm actually going to follow up on Donato's question about booster shots. There are some countries already in the EU that are providing booster shots to their general population, not just immunocompromised people. I was curious what you would say to them. Are they jumping the gun? My second question is more technical about the application from Pfizer to change the emergency authorization or conditional marketing authorization for ages 5 through 11. I was wondering if they actually submitted that data yet, and I've heard some criticism that their clinical trials are too small. I was wondering if you could comment on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Gillian. Maybe we start with the second question first on Pfizer and the application. Marco, I think that is for you.
Yeah, we have not received yet the formal application for Pfizer. We heard that the company made some press releases and some statement around their top-line result of their clinical trials in this pediatric age, but we have not received that yet, and I think it will happen later on, probably in October. So we are in discussion with them to see by when this can be submitted.
Thank you, Dr. Cavalieri. And Gillian, you had a follow-up question, or you had a first question on member state actions. I would like to give that question to Dr. Fergus Sweeney. Fergus, please.
So, thank you, and thanks, Gillian. I think it's important to understand the roles and responsibilities as European Medicines Agency. We are evaluating the evidence both for the initial marketing authorizations and the specific dossier that Marco has spoken about on the boosters. But at the same time, the vaccination authorities in the member states, the national institutes, they have to take account of the broader domain of the different waves of disease, the different vaccines they have available, and how they want to protect the members of their public, and therefore they set out their vaccination strategy and make their choices, and can do that in that context. And we will evaluate the evidence and add to the marketing authorizations and product characteristics as we assess that to support the member states in making their decisions. But they can take a broader view and have the competence to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Sweeney. Now we have a question from Victoria English from Med News. Victoria, please.
Hello, and thank you for taking my question. The first question I have is really sort of fundamental. Do booster shots in all cases have to be the same active ingredient, in other words, the same structure, the same mode of action as the original vaccine?
Thank you, Victoria. That is a question for Dr. Cavalieri. Dr. Cavalieri, please.
Yeah, of course, when we evaluate dossiers, companies normally they try to focus on their own vaccine, and the data they primarily generate are around boosting their own vaccine. But as you rightly say, we have seen that in the vaccination campaigns, in order to increase flexibility, a lot of these heterologous approaches have already taken place in the context of the primary series, and we would expect that even more so could happen in the context of booster doses. And that's the reason why we will be keen to understand what kind of evidence could be generated also in this sense, to have a better picture around the possibility of using different boosters from what has been given as primary vaccination. So we are in dialogue with the companies, but also with the public health authorities and academic groups in order to really understand if we could gather sufficient evidence for informing the use of these vaccines.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cavalieri. Now we have a question from Gerardo D'Amico from Rai News. Gerardo, please.
Hello all. The data of vaccination between 5 and 11 years presented by Pfizer with a press release report, immunogenicity and safety, but do not say if the presence of antibodies verified is immunizing. What data is expected EMI if Pfizer asks to wait for their vaccine to this age group? Thank you.
Thanks, Gerardo. And again, for Dr. Cavalieri.
I think indeed Pfizer in their press release a bit outlined what they expect will be the pivotal data that will be submitted to us. And again, as I mentioned before, there is an agreement at the level of the EMA with the Pediatric Committee for a pediatric investigation plan, which has been done also for the Pfizer vaccine. And essentially, in this agreement was decided what should be the size of the study and the endpoint that should be considered. So overall, we have been agreeing that the concept of bridging immunogenicity to young adult, for which we have efficacy data and immunogenicity data, would be the way forward to allow an estimate of the level of protection of these vaccines also in pediatric groups. And this will be the basis for a potential approval. We know that there will be some additional data that will be coming up to support this, and this data will be collected as they come. But the primary application is expected to be on these clinical trials focused on safety and immunogenicity.
Thank you, Dr. Cavalieri. The next question is from Antje Sieb from Westdeutscher Rundfunk in Germany. Antje, please.
Hello, thank you for taking my question. There seem to have been cases of multi-system inflammatory syndrome after vaccination. Could you explain what is known about that?
Thank you very much, Antje. This question will go to Dr. Genov. Dr. Genov, please.
Thank you for the question. Indeed, we have informed that our safety committee has started review of cases of multi-organ inflammatory syndrome. Now, a bit of background. You might remember that this new condition has been became known in the spring of 2020, and I think initially in the UK, where it was noted that in some children, and this is post-COVID, this is not post-vaccination, post-COVID, 4 to 6 weeks, there will be a hyperinflammatory condition that would cause this syndrome in children. Now, since then, there were reports also in adults, more rare, and it's a rare condition overall, and that is post-COVID. Now, what our committee is reviewing is we had a very limited number of cases, and it was triggered by one case, actually in Denmark, where a 17-year-old boy had possibly this multi-organ inflammatory syndrome, and no prior COVID was detected. So that is basically what has triggered the review. It's a complex evaluation. This syndrome is certainly related to COVID. If there is any relation to a vaccination, that's very unclear at this stage. But our safety committee is looking into this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Genov, for this response. Now we have a question from Vasiliki Angouridi from News for Health in Greece. Vasiliki, the floor is yours.
Hello, hi, and thank you for taking my question. And, yeah, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. You're breaking on and off a bit, but we'll try our best.
I think it's a network. Okay, so there have been data suggesting that a second dosage of the Janssen vaccine may increase the effectiveness of the offset vaccine. Is EMA considering maybe recommending a second dose of the vaccine to member countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vasiliki. That is a question for Dr. Cavalieri.
We are looking into this data, and indeed we are in discussion with the company to see by when they can be submitted to us, together with other data that are emerging with a second dose also administered with a longer interval. Just to remind everybody, this clinical trial essentially look into a second dose given after 2 months. And so we will be looking at all this data from this clinical trial and other studies that are ongoing in order to understand whether we can make a recommendation on a second dose of Janssen vaccine. But we have to wait for a good understanding of when a significant clinical data package can be assembled and submitted to us.
Thank you, Dr. Cavalieri, for this response. So we have now time for 2 more questions, and I know we have 2 follow-up questions. So the first follow-up question is from Donato Mancini from the Financial Times. Donato, please, the floor is yours.
Hi, I just wanted to follow up and ask you again, and this is a question for all members of the panel. Have you felt any pressure from companies to approve boosters? I just want you to address that specifically, if you can, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Donato. Dr. Sweeney will take this question.
I think it's very clear that we have to base all our decision-making and evaluation on the science and on the data that can be presented, whether it's by the companies or from other sources. We will maintain close evaluation of the data, and as Marco Cavalieri has described, we are looking carefully at data submitted, but we will make the decision based on the quality and definitiveness, if you like, of the scientific data and not on other considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sweeney. And now our final question, and I can see Victoria English from Med News has a follow-up question. So, Victoria, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Back to the booster again, please. Would it be conceivable that a booster could act as a response to a new variant?
Thank you very much, Victoria. Dr. Cavalieri, please.
I think indeed the data that have been presented so far in the public domain would show that there is a really good immune response after the booster dose, which we confer such high titers of neutralizing antibodies that will be able to neutralize the main variants that are around now, including the Delta. Now, our assessment is still ongoing, so I cannot tell you where we will end, but the preliminary data will be rather reassuring in this sense.
Thank you very much to everybody for your really excellent question this afternoon and for attending our press briefing. Thank you very much to our panel for taking part. As always, If you do have any further questions that have not been answered here, please do not hesitate to contact the EMA press office. Thanks again and goodbye.